Waiting for you all to jump in and say what's up and let us know you're in here when you're in here, and we will get this thing rolling. We'll be here for 20 minutes to a half hour today and go through my top plays. There's a ton to wait on. Like who teams are starting is way up in the air. We don't know who Indy's going to start with no Brogdon, but with Halliburton and Healdon. If Heald starts, that obviously makes him interesting. If Lance were somehow to start again, which I don't think, but it would make him interesting. I think he's interesting anyway a little bit. It's going to be tough because we want to know, who's starting for each of these teams, and I think we know who the Sixers are going to start. And the one guy who's not like projecting for anything for the Sixers is Korkmaz, and that's kind of interesting. We kind of know who will probably start for the Thunder, but I don't think it really matters all that much. And we know who's going to start for Charlotte, but Montrezl Harrell now is available off the bench, which actually puts him in play on FanDuel for me. And PJ Washington is so much less interesting than he was to me earlier today because of that. The Pistons starters should be the same. I think Isaiah Stewart's still a fine play in this matchup, a great matchup against Charlotte. I like Cade on FanDuel. And I'm just going through the first games real quick, and then I just want to see who Indy starts before I say anything. Okoro as a desperate, minimum cost guy against a team that can be sloppy in Indy is kind of interesting to me as a value spot on FanDuel. Oddly, we don't have as much value today, and I do like some of the spend ups. So I'll get into my priority plays on each site, and I'm going to spend about 5 minutes doing that. Then you guys get in there with questions, and we'll go from there. I hope everybody is having a good golf week. I'm very frustrated because I really had some really, really sick lineups. So with Thigala, just can't get all 6 of 6. I am going to get all 6 of 6 in one, but it's kind of frustrating. And that one actually is going to have a pretty reasonable chance in the Giant one, but kind of frustrating because it certainly missed out on some good opportunities. I got talked into too much Fowler, and that really pisses me off because I hate playing Ricky Fowler. I just bought into the narrative a little too much, and I bought into a little too much of some of the wrong guys, Brendan Steele and Aaron Wise. Very frustrating because my pivot was Adam Hadwin, and Adam Hadwin is crushing. So anyway, back to basketball. On DraftKings, priorities: Young, Murray, Ball, Oubre, Herter, one of Herter, Hunter, Vassell, or Collins. I really like that whole game environment, so I want all exposure to those guys. But the priorities being Young, Murray, Ball, Oubre, and then from that game, from the Atlanta game, Herter, Hunter, Vassell, and Collins are all interesting. I just don't want to play too many Atlanta guys with all of them healthy on the same lineup. So I would probably try and do like a 2-1 or a 2-2 on that. Actually, I mentioned in Discord before. Who's ever starting for Denver at point guard or guard, I think you could even, it's going to be weird. Like less interest if it's Austin Rivers, more interest if it's Campazzo, more interest in Highland either way. But they do have a lot of guards available just to keep, that out there. It looks like Derek White's not going to play, so I really like the Celtics. One of Tatum, Brown, or Smart will be in a majority of my lineups. And then the guys to mix in, DeRozan, Vooch, or Levine on DK. One of those three, I prefer DeRozan and Vooch on DK. I prefer Levine on FanDuel, and I actually love Levine on FanDuel. Edwards, Russell, or Cat. I think Russell's going to be popular, so I don't mind just pivoting over to Edwards. The problem with Cat is I really like Embiid and Jokic, and I want to build around them on FanDuel, so I'm having trouble getting to Cat. But I especially like Jokic tonight, and I think that he's getting way overlooked, and I'm going to play him on DK just because he's being overlooked. So that's my quick rundown of who I'm playing today. You guys pop on in. Let's go. Thanks to Dunbar for the compliment on the shirt. We got the Lakers shirt back on again. FanDuel value. I hate that's the problem. Is like, do we have Highland starting? I don't have that news through yet. If Highland starts, I think Highland is a good source of value actually that you can use on FanDuel. But FanDuel value is all sort of sketchy. Kelly Olynyk, I still like him okay, but I think he gets a knockdown with what's his name being back, with Cade being back. I think he can sort of run things in the second unit without Cade. But I still like him in this matchup, so I'm not against it. Batatse, I'm going to play some Okoro, which feels really thin, but I'm hoping for something better to open up. DeAndre Hunter, I already mentioned Batatse's 5K. I know it's not quite. Vassell, Lonnie Walker as a pivot off of Vassell. We don't know who's starting for San Antonio tonight, so that's another one we got to keep an eye out for. O'Shea Brissett's a little higher than I want to spend for him on FanDuel. Buddy Hield, I think, assuming that if he does start, I really like him on FanDuel at 4,700, but I don't love the value, so it is kind of tricky. So Highland starting, I I think it's a bump up for Highland. I think he was in play anyway. He's going to be more popular now, so that's a little frustrating, but it's still a good play. I also like Patrick Beverley on FanDuel, assuming that he is in fact good to go, because those guys seem to be questionable every night, and most of them seem to usually play, but we will see. Anyway, let's keep it going. Let's get in more questions, and let's see what else we got here. Highland in, that's nice. All right. Okay, the favorite five. Let's see. Looks like there's no questions, so I guess we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Pop on in your questions, guys, and yeah, Vassell, I figured would start, but did they give the full starting lineup for San Antonio yet? I don't have that in front of me, and it's probably just now coming through. I would assume that it would be Vassell, Murray, Johnson, and McDermott and Podol, but I still like Lonnie Walker as a pivot off the bench, and he's going to be so much lower owned. And remember, he gets to play some minutes without all the high usage guys. Some of them will be on there, but not all the high usage guys. And I think Zach Collins is a really good tournament flyer. I know he doesn't play many minutes, but we're starving for value. The game is later. We might get other value that you can use instead of him then. Wow. I actually am looking at with Garland ruled out, I think LeVert is more in play than I initially thought. I don't think I'm going to play him, but I wouldn't mind if you want to do it. Probably too much of a reach for me still. But like Dean Wade is now starting, and I don't know what to do with that one. That's another thin value play that you can use some of, but I'm not going to do it probably. Osman, Okoro, I think they get a little bit of a bump, but it's really not all that much. It's more minutes for those guys. Yeah, it's still not a beautiful picture for the Cleveland situation, even with Garland out. So the value is a little thin tonight. So I went through all my plays. Let's go through questions and stuff. Let's see. Kelly Olynyk right now. My ownership now is really not a good question, not a good sample, because it's going to change drastically when every starting lineup comes out, and we're getting some of them, but we don't have all of them yet. So right now I do have Kelly Olynyk in more lineups than I'd like, because he's my starving for value guy, but about 30%, and I'm going to be less than that by the time the lineups lock. Cade on FanDuel, absolutely. I mentioned I like Cade on FanDuel at the top. I do like him. Charlotte guys for FanDuel would be Ball, Rozier, for me, Bridges, and then Oubre. And I like all four of those guys. But the only other one I would consider is Harrell. I don't think I'm going to be playing. I might have one lineup that's a cheaper buy-in with Washington, but I actually think playing Harrell is the way to go here if you're going to take a tournament shot. All right, FanDuel priorities, basically the same. FanDuel is a little different. Rozier, Ball, Young, Murray, Embiid, Jokic, Levine, Cade. Now, I know there's a lot of spend-ups, but if you don't have to play all of those guys in the same lineup, but those are my favorite 9 plays, and those are the guys I'm going to be trying to get in one or another. I have zero interest in Barton on any site. You guys can go ahead and do it. There's no logical, like it's not like he's getting a huge boost without Monte Morris. Like, this is actually less. He's now playing with the guys who are higher usage. So I don't actually see this as a beneficial situation for Barton at all. So no Barton for me. Celtics players, I would go, depending on which site. On FanDuel, it's actually pretty close on both sites. Smart makes more sense on DraftKings because there's the point guard and shooting guard are loaded on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it would be one of Tatum or Brown, and I really think they're really close. They're just a little different. I'm probably using a little more Brown over there, a little more Tatum on FanDuel, but I don't think it's really a huge barrier. You're playing them for their upside game, and it's not going to be both of them probably. It's going to be one of them most likely, and then you run them back with Jokic. And it's a little easier to run like Smart with Jaylen Brown than it is to run him with Tatum, just because pricing is an issue today. So that's the only reason. But I do think Tatum could get 60. I think Brown could get 60, not at the same time. And I think that you're going to see 30 plus out of Smart most of the time here. So I really like all three of those guys quite a bit. That's how I would rank those exposures. Any interest in Halliburton? I think it's an interesting speculative play. To be honest, I don't think I'm going to do any of it. His price is a little high on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I definitely think he's in play, but there's just so many good plays at the position, and Cleveland is a great defensive team. There's nothing to overly like love about him here, in my opinion. The more I look back at it, the LeVert thing is starting to pique my interest just a little bit, but I really think it's a large field play, long shot play that you can use, but I don't think it's something you should be building around or anything like that. Still looking at starting lineups. Keep firing in the questions, guys. We can do it like rapid hour. PJ Washington is basically a no-go for me with I would rather at the same price on FanDuel take a shot on Harrell in his first game. Now, yes, he's fine in the nature of the slate for Washington, but he just got a huge bump down, and I don't think the projections are accounting for that. Like if Montrezl Harrell's coming off the bench, they got Montrezl Harrell to play for them. They don't have bigs. They got him to play. So that means PJ Washington loses his 5 minutes. He's not going to get minutes over Oubre, Bridges, Rozier, and Ball. So how is he going to get many minutes other than bench minutes? That's the way I see it. So where I just think unless he makes a bunch of threes and stays on the court that way, there's really no reason why Washington should be in play more than usual. I think it's probably the worst that he's been as a play in a long, long time because Harrell's arrival. But I mean, again, still viable-ish, just not a guy who I'm going to be using in my big buy-ins. Bitadze, absolutely. Assuming that he starts, we need the starting lineup, but I'm assuming he will. And by the way, Jalen Smith might be available tonight as well. Who knows who Indiana starts? We need to know who that. We're going to have that starting lineup before lock. But I'm less open to the guys who I wanted to play. I wanted to try some Isaiah Jackson earlier today. It's not going to happen with Jalen Smith, assuming that Jalen Smith is in fact going to be available for tonight's game, which it looks like he is. So I'm definitely like a little, I don't know, tempering my expectations. I think there's a really long shot play. You could use Jalen Smith as a instead of Olynyk, instead of they may play two bigs at Indy, and Brissett is not exactly a regular big, so maybe you end up seeing some minutes for Jackson. Or maybe you see some minutes for Jalen Smith with Bitadze. And I think that's really interesting to take the long shot play on Jalen Smith on FanDuel. But again, you're talking about like maybe if you're doing that because you have a lineup that's really chalky that has one of like Olynyk or Collins, I think that's an interesting way to go. DK has no Harrell or Smith. That means nothing. I know. Any of these players who traded, we're just going to have to use to DK's not going to have them. But I just mentioned on FanDuel specifically. I absolutely know that they don't have them on DraftKings. I think the Jalen Smith thing is a weird long shot play that could work out for you. Like, I mean, you're talking about Olynyk in 20 minutes. You're talking about 17 minutes out of what's his name? Jalen Smith was the number 10 pick. This guy was picked. Wasn't he picked? He was picked ahead of Tyrese Halliburton. Just to give you an idea, they couldn't extend him, which is why he got traded. But he looked nothing but great in the minutes that he got this year for the most part. Like he was really good. Just a really tough to get minutes on the, arguably the best team in the NBA. So I really like the Jalen Smith idea as a long shot play, regardless of who starts for Indy. Obviously, if for some reason he started, he's going to be massive chalk, and we should be playing him probably even at some chalk while mixing in some Bitadze and maybe even some Isaiah Jackson long shot plays. I don't think I'm going to end up with Isaiah Jackson, but I don't think it's the worst idea in the world to take a shot on a guy with a ceiling, which he does have. He might play 2 minutes, he might play 30, but he'll put up fantasy points for the minutes that he's on the court usually, and they're going to have to play big against this Cleveland team. So what you can do is on FanDuel, if you're going to play Brissett, you can pivot over to a guy like a Jalen Smith over there, or as I said, instead of Kelly Olynyk or Kelly Olynyk or Zach Collins, who I also both think have they're viable because of the nature of the slate. Please hit the like button, guys. As Rody says, appreciate that. Pop in some questions. We got another few minutes to go, so let's keep it going. Favorite power forwards on FanDuel. See, this is a great question, Dunbar. The problem is the power forwards. Like, I guess Jeremy Grant is still a really good play. I think he is. It's a good matchup. He's 5,200, et cetera, et cetera. They could maybe stay close, although I kind of like them not to stay close as much in this game. I had the Charlotte bet as one of my bets, but they certainly could. By the way, Cade, I'm probably going to come off Cade at such high ownership on FanDuel. His ownership's going to be crazy over there, and I don't know if I want to do that. But I do think Jeremy Grant is definitely one of the guys you're mixing in. I am, unfortunately, at the moment playing some Olynyk. I love Tatum as a spend up. PJ Washington is going to be popular. I will skip it, and I will play. Instead of PJ Washington as a direct pivot, I'm going to play Montrezl Harrell and just hope, because they did trade Harrell to get minutes out of him. I don't know if it'll be tonight, but Harrell, we know what he can do. And for a team that wants him without a genuine big, like, I don't think it'll be long before Harrell's either starting or like I think you're going to see Plumlee's minutes decrease as the season goes on. Tonight it might be Washington's, but in the future I think it might be Plumlee's. That's the way I see that situation. All right, let's talk about what else we got here. Let's see. Questions. 2v2 Wolves and DK. Tell me I'm crazy. 240 total though. I have no problem with that, man. Brian, look, this is the way you can try and win tournaments. Take those shots. You know what I mean? I'm siding with the Atlanta San Antonio as my favorite game to stack, but that game is definitely stackable. Let's do it. I'm all in on. I mean, I'm all in for someone else doing it. I am not doing that as much myself, but I don't mind if you want to go with that stack. And again, it was asked me earlier, why isn't Levine by far my favorite play? And I know the reasoning behind the question is everybody's going to try and come up with narratives at home for teams don't work as much, and they don't work as much for good teams. And I still think there's enough of Levine's a good enough play just because the matchup on FanDuel. If this game was in Minnesota, I'd be much more interested in the Levine shot. But I do like Levine still. I mean, it's just you can't play everybody, and I prefer Trae Young and DeJounte Murray and LaMelo Ball. Do I still like Hunter on DK? I think Hunter is one of the guys you mix in. Like, he's not a core play for me, but he is one of the values that I think has enough of a upside to get there. I like him. I like all of them. I mean, legitimately all except for Capella. And by the way, Capella one day is going to, in like 20 minutes, put up like 45 fantasy points. But I'm just not, I mean, you can't play him really. But I think all four of the other starters are in play. With Gallinari back, it's a little bumped down. He's even in play. Bogdanovich would be a long shot play, but they've got everybody healthy. So just be careful with the Hawks outside of the main guys who will get minutes, like Trae. Hunter will. Assuming he doesn't get, foul trouble or something. Herter will. And then you want to hope for it's not a blowout too, because the Spurs are not very good. All right, keep popping in the questions, guys. I love the rapid fire. We're doing it. Let's see. Instead of telling me what you said you've got Vooch, DDR, and Bev and D'Lo. I think I would go Dave the D'Angelo Russell. I think he's going to be the popular one, but again, it doesn't matter if you're going to play Vooch and DDR in the same lineup. So I mean, yeah, if it's great. I think I wouldn't go. I like Anthony. I like Edwards because of the ownership, but that's only if I'm playing one to try and get different. To answer the Batatse question for the 9th time, yes, I like Batatse if he starts. We don't have a starting lineup yet for Indiana. Assuming that he is starting, I do think that he's a good play. Yes. So that would be my answer to Batatse. And that's that. All right, guys, keep firing him on in. We will keep it rolling. Hyperspeed. Hope Sheets is having a nice night. I think that Fridays are mostly going to be solos. Maybe I can get my man Rody to come in with me to do a half-hour one next time. Yeah, Capella's not viable due to the minute. They've really, I mean, they basically don't play him towards the end of games anymore. But of course, he can get there. Like, we know it's possible, but it's really like we've had this conversation for weeks now. I mean, when is the last time that Capella played 30 minutes in a game? I think that it might have been. Was it this year even? I don't even know. I don't mean this season. I mean this year. I mean, since New Year's. Since New Year's, one game. On January 30, he played 31 minutes. Other than that, you're talking about 27 out of 28 games. It's pretty grim. I mean, sure, can he put up 30 and squeak it out? Yeah, but do you really want that? I would rather play the guy like Batatse who has a little bit more. By the way, Desonmu has passed concussion protocols, so that's a bump down for every bull for me. And Kobe White was going to be in my mix if Desonmu was out, but not going to be in the mix anymore. Desonmu is actually not even the worst play, but I don't think that I need to do it on this particular slate. Let's see what else we got. Oh no, Rody, not your bad. That's great. Let's do it next time, buddy. I mentioned LeVert a bunch of times. I just think it's too much, but at this end for a team that here's the problem. Okay, so if LeVert plays the same way and has the 30+% usage rate and all the stuff like he did with Brooklyn and with Indy, great. But why? He's there to help the team, and I hope he knows that, because everybody else thinks it's a great pickup for Cleveland. I think it might be a terrible pickup for them. I think it's really dangerous. I think he's the kind of guy who can torpedo. He's a much better fantasy stat guy than he is an actual real life basketball player. It's very, very rarely leads to any wins. Every team is basically worse when he's on it. So it depends. Will they let him take over? It's really not his team. But I do think there's enough upside, and it's a good enough matchup, and it's back in Indy and all the things that maybe you get it out of him. So look, I would say large field play, but if you have the stones to do it, put him in whatever you want. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to justify it over LaMelo Ball. That feels very thin. But if you play him and to play him in addition is really tough because I love Trae Young and DeJounte Murray and Jokic. Jokic is he's going to get no ownership for the same reason. But the thing is, like Jokic, LeVert getting 50, which is even that may not be good enough, but it probably will be at 8,600, or Jokic getting 70 at 12.4. Wouldn't I just play Jokic instead? You know what I mean? If you're going to try and get the off the board guy, that's the way my brain works. That's the way I'm going to do. I'd rather just take the guy who's probably going to get 70. By the way, I really am. I understand his lack of value, but like Jokic is a phenomenal tournament play tonight. I don't think they're going to let him hold Garland Sexton back. I think what he should be is a glamorized, 6th, 7th man for them, and that's the best case scenario. But I do think that at this moment, he is a viable DFS play, even though I think it has a lot to do with the fact that no one else is going to do it. And we know he's got upside, and it's his former team, and it's back in the building, and all the things. And who knows if they boo him or whatever gets him going. But it's just not his team, You've also got Kevin Love, Osman, Rondo, and Goodwin and Lamar Stevens all going to get good minutes off the bench, and it's going to be run offensively through LeVert, Mobley, until Kevin Love comes in the game, and then it runs through him, Rondo, Goodwin, Osman, etc. But I do think LeVert is going to have some usage, just looking at the way their lineup shakes out. So I think that he's okay. Brissett and Batadze together, not my favorite. The Indy questions, we should probably stop referring to Brissett and Batadze until we know that they're starting as the starters, because I'm telling you, Jalen Smith, I'm not just saying he could start. I think Jalen Smith is a phenomenal large field play on FanDuel. I know you can't play him on DraftKings, but Brissett's going to be really popular. I will have some Brissett, don't get me wrong. You need to play big, but the bigger guys, Brissett's really not really a big guy. He's sort of like they converted him into a big guy. Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith are have much more size to match up with Mobley, Allen, Love. And I think that might be the way that I would look at going, is to try and get really weird with it and make one of those plays. And always, as we know, Lance can dance, so we can play a little bit of Lance as well. Kelio is in play again. Same question we've got before, but yes, Kelio is in play. I don't think it's as strong a play as maybe the field regards it as, but there is the upside, which is enticing, and we don't have the value, so that makes him a better play. Does Roby back hurt? Those guys are not even relevant to me. You're not, in my opinion, if you're playing anybody from the Thunder, not named Lou Dort on DraftKings, I think you're really, really, really just playing to pray. I do think that maybe, yes, it does hurt Poku, but is there a chance Poku could do it in garbage time in that sense? Of course. It's just a wild card play, though. I mean, there's a chance Poku plays 0 minutes. We've seen the DNP CDs, and then we've seen him go the next game and put up 40 fantasy points. It's just you're just basically throwing a dart at a wall, hoping it sticks, and that's that. I'm going to get out of here, guys. Hopefully this was helpful. I will be a Thibault okay on FanDuel. I actually think Thibault is okay on FanDuel because of the nature of the matchup. Sloppy team, a lot of pressure. He can put on the ball. I like Thibault to get 4 or 5 stocks tonight, and that already puts him at like 15 fantasy points. If he just has a normal human game in the 30 minutes that he plays, you're going to be at 30 fantasy points, and that, of course, makes him in play when we're thin for value. But I think I lean Okoro a little bit ahead of him because he's 3,500, and that's really the only reason. Although same price, I like Thibault better. Good luck to everybody. Let's crush it tonight. I'll be in Discord. There will be some late-ish swap news because there's some games are at 7:30 and some games are at 8. But appreciate all you guys for being here. Hopefully that quick rundown was helpful, and let's crush it.